James had always dreamed of living in a quiet countryside home, away from the chaos of the city. When he found an old Victorian house listed at an unbelievably low price, he couldn't resist. The moment he stepped inside, he felt a strange chill, but he ignored it, thinking it was just a cold autumn air. On his first night, he heard faint whispers coming from the walls. At first, he dismissed them as the wind sneaking through the cracks. But as the whispers grew louder, he realized they weren't just random noises, they were words. They were calling his name. The next evening, James sat in his dimly lit living room, scrolling through his phone when the overhead light flickered. He looked up just in time to see a shadow dart across the room too fast to be human. A wave of unease settled in his chest. He turned off the light, hoping it was just a power issue. But in the darkness, the whispering returned, this time clearer. "James, we see you," the voices hissed. His blood ran cold. He bolted out of the room and locked himself in his bedroom, his heart pounding against his ribs. But the whispers didn't stop. If anything, they grew closer. Determined to prove he wasn't losing his mind, James set up cameras around the house the next day. That night, he sat in bed watching the live footage on his laptop. At exactly 3:13 a.m., he saw a tall, dark figure standing in the hallway. He sprinted out of bed, rushing to the hallway, but found it empty. However, the air was heavy, almost suffocating, as if something unseen was standing right beside him. That's when he noticed that his shadow was moving on its own. The next morning, James avoided mirrors, but curiosity got the better of him. He cautiously approached the antique mirror in his bathroom. His reflection was normal until it wasn't. His mirror itself blinked out of sync, then grinned wickedly. James stumbled backward, his breath caught in his throat. The grin on his reflection widened, stretching impossibly far. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, it spoke. "You don't belong here." Desperate for answers, James searched the house for anything unusual. Behind an old bookshelf, he found a door he had never noticed before. It was covered in strange, deep scratches, as if something had been trying to claw its way out. His hands trembled as he turned the rusted doorknob. The moment the door creaked open, an overwhelming wave of dread washed over him. Inside the room was a small wooden chair facing a wall, and carved into the wood were the words, "They watch from the shadows." That night, James felt an ice-cold hand touch his shoulder as he lay in bed. He froze, unable to move. Slowly, he turned his head and saw a pair of hollow, glowing eyes staring at him from the darkness. Paralyzed with fear, he couldn't scream, couldn't breathe. The shadowy figure leaned closer, whispering in a voice that made his skin crawl. "Run, before they take you." James ran to his closest neighbor, an old woman who had lived in the area for decades. When he told her about the shadows, her face paled. "You shouldn't have moved in," she whispered. "The last owner, he disappeared." James felt his stomach drop. "Disappeared," he echoed. The woman nodded solemnly. And before him, the family who lived there vanished too. The house doesn't let them leave. Determined to uncover the truth, James drilled into the walls where the whispers were strongest. What he found made his blood turn to ice. Inside the walls were dozens of withered human faces, their mouths frozen in silent screams. The whispering turned into shrill laughter, filling the house. James stumbled back, realizing the awful truth. The house wasn't haunted, it was alive. And it was hungry. James grabbed his keys and ran for the front door, but the house fought back. The walls stretched, the floorboards cracked open, and long, dark arms reached out, trying to drag him into the abyss. He sprinted toward a window, smashing through the glass. As he hit the ground outside, he heard a deafening screech from the house, as if it was enraged that he had escaped. He scrambled to his feet, running into the dark woods. But the whispering didn't stop. The shadows were following him. James didn't stop running until he reached the main road. Gasping for breath, he turned back, expecting to see the house in the distance. But it was gone. The house had disappeared. Relief washed over him until he glanced at his shadow under the streetlights. It didn't match his movements. It was standing still. And then it smiled. Thanks for watching. Please click the Ace Animation Studio subscribe button, like, comment, and share for more interesting horror stories like this. Thank you.